My wife left me for a few weeks and admitted she cheated because she was bored. Now she's laughing about wanting to come back to me. It's a rather complicated situation, so here's some explanation. My wife is 39 years old, I'm 40, and we've been married for 17 years. As I mentioned, we have 3 daughters, ages 15, 13, and 11. We fell in love back in high school and have been together for about 23 years. I know almost nothing about what's going on. Here's all the information I have. 3 days ago, my wife came home from work. She had to work on the U.S. Independence Day and was visibly agitated, emotional and upset. She hastily packed an overnight bag and left. I only found out because our eldest daughter was home at the time and saw it happen. She tried talking to her mother, but my wife just cried, seemed depressed, and didn't say a word. My daughter said her mom was panicking. My wife hasn't responded to any of our messages or calls. I contacted her parents, and they finally replied that she was with them and asked us to be patient and understanding. That's all they told me. I tried to reach her sister, her brother, and one of her close friends from work. Her brother said he knew nothing, and her friend told me my wife was at work in the morning, but by lunchtime, 3 days ago, she disappeared. That's all she knows. So, for 3 days, there's been no contact from my wife, no one's telling us anything. Meanwhile, I'm here alone with our 3 daughters, trying to cope without her. The kids keep asking what's happening, what's going on with their mom. All I can say is that she's at their grandparents' house, and we have to be patient and understanding. I have a huge urge to just pack up the kids and drive there without warning, it's only a 3-hour drive. Sitting here in the dark is unbearable. The kids think their mother and I had a huge fight and are getting divorced, but that's far from the truth. We never fight, and the kids know that. I have no idea what's happening. Does anyone have a logical explanation? In my emotional state, I'm going in circles trying to handle everything without her. If somebody died, wouldn't your spouse or family be the first people you tell? Maybe some old trauma resurfaced, but if that happened to me, my wife would be the first person I'd go to for support. We know nothing, and none of this makes sense. I don't know what to do. I'm just sitting here with my daughters, and nobody is telling us anything. It worries me, scares me, and makes me angry. I'm feeling every possible emotion you can imagine in this kind of situation. Can anyone offer a logical guess as to why she's treating her family this way? Let's pause this story now and answer the author's questions. Why? Why do you think the wife did this to him? Update 1. Turns out everyone was right. This was an affair. There's not much to say. Last night was a long one, I didn't sleep. Sorry for the short update, I don't think I'll spend much time online today. But yesterday, I read all the comments and kept reading them into the night. I'll try to respond later. Here's what I know, my father-in-law didn't call me last night like he was supposed to, so in the end, I contacted the police. They did a wellness check, as many of you suggested. It caused a huge storm of problems, which I won't get into. It turned out my wife really had been cheating on me for at least 2 years, maybe longer. Everyone was right, there was another man. That man apparently had a heart attack on Tuesday and passed away the same night. My mother-in-law, and probably my wife's sister, knew about this and were covering for her. I still haven't heard anything from my wife, neither have I nor our daughter. I'm trying to hide this from the kids, but honestly, I have no idea what to do next. That's all I know, and it's enough to break me. Thank you all for your help and advice. I'm not sure how to cope with this news, but that's everything. If you pray, please pray for me and my family. Update 2. I've read many stories similar to mine whenever I had time, mostly at night after the daytime chaos died down. But my mind takes over, and I fall into either depression or rage, sometimes both at once. Sleeping is almost impossible. During the day, I walk around like a zombie. Initially, I believed my wife's affair lasted 2 years, but now it seems it went on for much longer. The man she was cheating with was someone she had known for quite a while, and he died tragically of a heart attack, which led to the whole affair being exposed. I'm still gathering information with the help of my eldest daughter, and there are many details I'm not ready to discuss yet. I hadn't planned on continuing to post updates, but many people offered help and advice that truly is helping me stabilize mentally. It hurts to realize so many people have gone through or are going through the same kind of pain. That's where things stand now. I'm truly sorry for everyone who goes through this. I met with 2 different attorneys, one yesterday and one today, to discuss my options. I also reached out to several therapists, but the waiting lists in my area are very long. I'm trying to follow much of the advice people have given me: avoid alcohol, not a problem, since I don't drink and never have, take care of myself, keep exercising, and so on. I'd say I'm in pretty good shape for my age, but right now it's hard to find the energy to work out. I know many of you would like more details: who, what, when, why, and so on, but please understand that I'm just not ready to go into all of that. Every day feels like a new bomb exploding. At this point, I'm mainly looking for advice on one question: how do I start sleeping again? That's really the point of this post. My wife was everything to me, my best friend since high school and the mother of our 3 beautiful daughters. We had inside jokes, secret handshakes, and now all of that has suddenly disappeared. It's just gone. I'm remembering every year we spent together, every meaningful moment, every laugh, and now it drives me into a deep depression. It's paralyzing, as if it meant nothing to her. Then I start imagining a future without her, which leads to a wave of rage as I think, how could you do this? I scream into my pillow and punch the mattress until my arms cramp up. Then the cycle repeats. It's awful. I only fall asleep when I'm completely exhausted, and then I suddenly wake up and the thoughts start all over again. Whatever energy I have left goes into taking care of my daughters, who are now trying to take care of me, almost as if they're the parents. It's so unfair to them. How did you manage to sleep after you found out about an affair? How did you handle the silence and emptiness at night when you were left alone with your thoughts? Aside from caring for my daughters, I want to make sleep my #1 priority in this whole situation. But I just can't manage it. I hope you can help. Update 3. It's been a little over a week since my Day X, and during this time, I found out that my wife's affair lasted more than 4 years. I still don't have a complete timeline, but it's clear that at first it was an emotional affair, and later it became physical. I'm curious how the pandemic and lockdowns might have influenced this, but I might never get those answers. In any case, yesterday my father-in-law and mother-in-law showed up unannounced, supposedly to see their grandchildren. My wife has been living with them ever since this nightmare began. It was pretty obvious the visit wasn't really about the kids. They only spent about 15 minutes with our 3 daughters before asking to speak with me privately. The conversation was long, as you can imagine, but I don't want to recount every detail here. In short, my wife wants to come back home, but she's afraid of how I'll react to what she's done and isn't ready to face the consequences. Her parents also wanted to know if I was planning on getting a divorce. They spent quite a bit of time trying to convince me to forgive her and try to rebuild our marriage. It was clear they were embarrassed and uncomfortable about her actions. It was also obvious they want her out of their house as soon as possible. The conversation was very civil, and I have to admit, I lied and told them I wasn't sure about my plans. In truth, I'm fully set on getting a divorce. But if I say that out loud now, I might never hear the truth from my wife. I want her to sit down across from me and tell me everything, if that's even possible. 17 years of marriage, a relationship that started in high school, 3 kids, countless memories and everything we've been through together. I need her to look me in the eye and explain it all. I also want my kids to know I gave her a chance to explain, to apologize, and to address this like mature adults. I'm still trying to choose the path that sets the best example for my children. I'm not sure if I'm doing the right thing. Legally, I can't stop my wife from coming back home. My lawyer made that very clear. So if she decides to return, I can't prevent it. Right now, I definitely don't want her here. My daughters and I are settling into a new routine. That's why I set a condition that I thought would be difficult for her to fulfill anytime soon. I told her she can come home only if she sits down with me, looks me in the eyes, and tells me the full story of her affair, from beginning to end, answering all of my questions without evasion or lies. After that, she must also talk to our daughters, apologize to them in person, and answer their questions. It seems fair to me, since they already know about the situation. Again, she can come home at any time and doesn't have to meet my conditions. But if she's afraid to meet with us, maybe I can use that to my advantage. Is it wrong? I'm not trying to be manipulative. I just really don't want to start living together again if I can avoid it. In our state, there's a mandatory 90-day waiting period before a divorce can be finalized. That's where things stand right now. So I still have some time. Her return home is inevitable, both of us will eventually have to go back to work, and life will go on despite all the chaos. I just want to extend this period a bit so I can plan everything out and try to stabilize my mental and emotional state. My wife keeps texting our daughters, telling them she doesn't want a divorce and constantly apologizing to them. The girls showed me her messages, she asks about me every day, and it seems the realization of what she's done is hitting her harder, especially in the last couple of days. How am I supposed to handle this? Is my demand, the condition I set for her return, unreasonable? It looks like she might come back home sooner than I expected. I do feel more certain now that I've decided to move forward. I knew this moment would come eventually. I just want to make the best decision for my daughters and then for myself. Fourth update. This may sound uneventful, sorry for the long post, but I need to get it all out. It was a terrible weekend. Yesterday, my wife came back home. This whole week felt like preparation for that moment. Before, whenever she walked through the door, I'd greet her with a hug and a kiss. But this time, there was an awful, awkward tension between us. She came up and tried to hug me before saying anything, but I turned away as though nothing had happened. After she got settled, I asked her to explain everything to me, but again, she repeated that she wasn't ready. We'd spoken on the phone earlier in the week, and she'd said the same thing. I insisted that the only condition for her return was to tell me why she had been gone for almost 3 weeks, if she truly loves her family. But all she did was repeat that she wasn't ready yet. It took a huge effort not to shout at her. I took a few deep breaths, trying to stay calm, but I still lost it after the first of many long pauses. I just blurted out that she'd been cheating on me for more than 4 years with her colleague, that she'd planned to leave us all for him, and now she walks back in without meeting the single condition I set, and that I want a divorce. That's when things got strange. Her body language and facial expression told me she clearly hadn't expected me to know so much about her affair. She looked at me with wide eyes, then stood in the kitchen staring at the floor, completely still and silent. I was prepared for just about anything but that, an emotional outburst, a tearful confession, maybe blaming me for her infidelity, or a serious, let's sit down and talk, conversation. But there was nothing. Honestly, we stood in complete silence for about 5 minutes. It was the strangest moment I've ever experienced. She obviously didn't know what to say, and neither did I. I'd read all your advice, took notes, even practiced in front of the mirror, preparing for every possible scenario in this confrontation, but not for that. In the moment, I decided to tell her what I knew about the affair. Maybe it was foolish. I started listing everything, how she met her lover, how her sister was involved, what happened during COVID, and so on. The whole time, she just kept staring at the floor. As I kept talking, I got angrier because she did nothing, said nothing, but I managed not to raise my voice or be insulting. Finally, I pulled myself together, and there was another long, awkward pause. Then my anger turned to sadness. I gently asked what I had done to push her away, if she'd ever really loved me, and whether the affair had been worth it. She didn't respond at all, didn't move, didn't look up. No tears, no apologies, no shouting, no explanation, nothing. That hurt, maybe more than on day X itself. I stood there, staring at her, unable to move. And then it got worse. Of course our daughters were listening to the entire conversation. I feel incredibly stupid. I'd invested so much energy in taking care of them and their needs these last few weeks, and in that moment of anger, I forgot to think about where they might be. Our eldest came downstairs and started crying. My wife ran upstairs and locked herself in the bedroom. I heard her sobbing almost all night, until I finally fell asleep. Only our youngest daughter tried to talk to her, the other two avoided her entirely. If I can gather the courage, I'll suggest she stay with her sister until the divorce is finalized. Of course, this is still her home, but all of us living here together would be unbearable. I was wrong about my wife, and everyone else was right. I was wrong about all our years together, about all our memories and pivotal moments. I truly believed she would fall to her knees and beg for forgiveness. I was so sure she would repent for everything that happened these last 4 years and come clean to ease her guilt, but none of that happened. This woman once went back to the farmer's market on purpose when she realized she'd been given an extra $10 in change, but apparently we're not worth that much to her. I'm not worth that much. Maybe I never was. So what now? Today at home was incredibly uncomfortable. My daughters and I tried to keep doing what we've been doing these last 2 weeks, but obviously that's impossible now. I just wish I could fast forward through all of this, through the divorce, the awkward conversations, the inevitable arguments and conflicts, and all the drama. To those who've been forced to keep living under the same roof as an unfaithful spouse, how did you cope? Especially with children in the picture. I understand this is only the beginning, and I keep reading stories from people saying it will get better, but right now that feels so far away. There isn't a single moment when I don't feel like screaming or bursting into tears. I'm doing my best to stay strong for my daughters, but I'm not sure I can handle this for 3 more months. The kids will be going back to school long before this is all over. It seems like this is my life now. Update 5. I'm in a terrible state and have been since my wife came back home and I found out about her affair. I tried my hardest to put on a brave face for my daughters, to say and think all the right things. But tonight, I have to admit the truth, as many of you have said, it comes in waves. And today it hit me especially hard, I lost control. The divorce papers are filed, but my wife hasn't hired an attorney yet. I'm trying to be as patient and careful as possible, hoping for an uncontested divorce we can settle ourselves. But after tonight, I'm not so sure. We've been living together for a few weeks now. On Fridays, my wife goes to her sister's place and returns home on Sunday evenings, because our house is near her workplace, while her sister's place is about an hour away, with no traffic. The last couple of weeks, we've settled into this routine of avoiding each other. The girls and I do our usual things, my wife mostly keeps to herself in the evenings. We occasionally interact, except for my eldest daughter. She won't speak to her mother after several big arguments. I've been following a lot of your advice and other recommendations I've read, doing everything I can to keep my composure when talking to my wife, even though it takes every bit of strength and willpower. I've been brief and indifferent, but always civil and polite, until tonight. Usually on Fridays, she comes home from work, packs a few things, and heads to her sister's before I get back. But not today. This evening, she was waiting for me in the kitchen when I walked in. I tried to brush past her, but she gently took my hand and asked if I was really going to treat her like this just because she wasn't ready to talk about her affair. By the way, that's the first time she's even mentioned her affair since everything blew up almost a month ago. I tried, truly tried, to stay quiet and just walk away. But the girls were out, and my anger boiled over. I let it all out, every hurt, every wound, every ounce of rage, suffering, and despair that had been building up in me. I have no idea how long I talked, I lost track of time. I definitely raised my voice and got more and more emotional. I basically broke down, telling her how broken I am and about the agony I feel day in and day out. Everything I'd been bottling up, everything that's been eating at me. I could probably write 4,000 words if I tried to recount it all. Once I started, I couldn't stop. Yes, I cried. My emotions poured out again. Afterwards, I was furious with myself. She got to me, and I let her. I knew it would happen. I knew it. This had been building up for so long. It had to come out eventually, everyone has a limit. But here's what happened for the first time, my wife broke down too and showed actual emotion. To my surprise, she started sobbing uncontrollably. I hate to admit it, but I felt a bit of satisfaction seeing her in as much pain as I'm in. I wish I didn't care, but it felt like a relief to see her finally crack, as if she does have a shred of remorse in her. Unexpectedly, during my outburst, she kept apologizing over and over, crying in the ugliest, rawest way possible, repeating, "I'm so sorry." In the end, I walked out of the kitchen before she could pull herself together to say anything else, and I told her to leave me alone. She stayed in the kitchen for a while, then took off to her sister's again. The girls came home about half an hour later and knew something had happened. It was impossible to hide. I just wasn't ready to talk about it, and I don't think they need to know every detail. The younger two have been feeling better lately, and I don't want to ruin that progress. Telling my eldest would just add fuel to the fire, which I definitely don't want either. I hate all of this. I just hate it. I needed to keep my cool, to brush it off and keep walking. Now, looking back, it seems she was trying to start a conversation about the affair but just didn't know how. Obviously, things didn't go anywhere because I exploded. I'm starting to worry about her. I know some of you might criticize me for that, but I don't want anything bad to happen to her. She's isolated, alone with her thoughts, and pretty much everyone has turned away from her. You could say she deserves it, and it's true, but she's still a human being and the mother of my children. What a step backward. I'm really disappointed in myself. Sorry for another long confessional. I called my brother and vented to him too. Damn. I'll try starting fresh on Monday. I'm only human. Honestly, I do feel better after unloading all of that on her, but now the guilt is overwhelming. Should I text her or just leave things as they are? My head is spinning. But thank you for listening and for the support I desperately need. We've all started going to therapy, which is something at least, but it's all unbelievably hard, almost impossible. Update 6. I know a lot of you have tried to support me, and I truly appreciate your concern. But it turns out most of us were right, things are not going well. I wanted to take a break from it all, but this week has knocked me down even harder. It's been horrible. All week, my wife has practically smothered me. She's overly nice, constantly apologizing for her affair, crying, and basically crushing me with her attention. She's been knocking on my door at night, trying to talk. I ignored her when I could, but sometimes I talked to her if I felt up to it. Finally, on Wednesday night, I snapped and told her to leave me alone. Then last night it happened. It's been a little over a month since my wife came back home, after her affair was revealed. And now we're settling into this uncomfortable routine of living together. Last night, after the girls went to bed, she came to my room and asked if we could talk in private, this time in a way that felt different from the rest of the week. At first, I resisted, but in the end we went to the garage and sat in my car, so we wouldn't end up fighting in front of the kids again. I apologize in advance for the long story. She told me everything. According to her, we sat there for almost 3 hours. I'm not sure how much I can share. I haven't slept all night, I couldn't fall asleep, listening to her cry for hours. I cried, too. Then I'd be overwhelmed by wild anger and had to hold myself back from screaming at her. Then tears again, anger again, and so on. I'm sorry if I don't answer anyone's questions right away, I need to get this off my chest and try to sleep. Nothing is helping, including the fact that my wife keeps apologizing and begging me to give her another chance. All evening, I had to leave for several hours just to get away from her, being around her is unbearably painful. So, it was her sister who introduced her to her lover, before COVID, about 5 years ago. According to my wife, there were no romantic intentions at first. He was a high-ranking employee at the company where she wanted to work, and where she works now. He helped her get the job. She claims her desire to change jobs wasn't motivated by the affair, but as you can guess, once she got in, she had an added incentive. After she was hired, he started flirting with her. It began with texting, then photo exchanges, and long before COVID, it turned physical. She confessed to her sister and wanted to tell me at the time, but decided to bury that secret and say nothing. My wife said that not long after the affair started, she cut off contact with him. But once the lockdowns ended, he reached out to her again, and she resumed talking to him until they returned to physical intimacy when she went back to work. She claims that she ended the affair multiple times out of guilt but always went back. Essentially, it never truly ended. She really did tell me a lot. She had a 5-year relationship with him. She went through all of it, answering my questions along the way. She lied about weekends with the girls, lied about business trips, lied about traffic, about issues with her parents, about going shopping, and so on, just like I suspected. The list was huge. So many lies, and I believed every word, never doubting her. All of it was a cover so she could spend time with him. Listening to this made me feel even worse, and everyone turned out to be right. The truth was more painful than I had imagined. However, my wife's affection for me never seemed to disappear during that time. She never became distant, which I've read is a common sign in these situations. Our sex life changed, but not so much that I noticed any red flags. In any case, she admitted she fell in love with him and wanted to live with him. He was older, divorced, single, and promised her expensive things, trips, and all sorts of indulgences. She started fantasizing about escaping her family responsibilities and said the thrill of being with him was too strong to resist. She talked about how bored she was with everyday family life. She was incredibly open, very emotional, and seemed honest. Halfway through her confession, I broke down and cried. It was so painful to hear. As expected, once she finished her story, she said how much she loves me and has always loved me, and that she's willing to do anything to save our marriage. Many of you predicted this would happen, and in that moment it felt so rehearsed, as if she'd prepared for it. I've known this woman for more than half my life, and I can usually tell when she's lying. Maybe I'm wrong, but at this point, it probably doesn't matter. I managed better than I did last week, but I still got angry and said some unpleasant things, including that her lover had been seeing multiple women and she was just one of many, someone he would have been ready to drop any time. Apparently, that stung her. A million thoughts rushed through my head, things I could have said to hurt her in return, hundreds of possible comebacks I couldn't remember in the heat of the moment. But there was one question I couldn't hold back: if her lover were still alive and she had to choose between him and me, who would she pick? She hesitated and mumbled something about it being unfair. I insisted, and eventually she said she would, of course, choose me. My response was that her hesitation is the reason I want a divorce, because she's still lying. She started sobbing, and that ended the conversation. We sat in the car a while longer. She just cried, and I was so exhausted that I told her we're getting divorced, but for the sake of our daughters we need to act civil, be good parents, and remain present in their lives. I also added that after all the pain she's caused me, I hope she'll be decent enough to go through with the divorce honestly and peacefully. She claimed she really had loved me. The last thing I said to her was something I read online somewhere. Please understand I'm not a vindictive person, and I didn't say it to hurt her on purpose. It just felt like the right conclusion to the entire ordeal, and I was 100% sincere about it. I leaned over, kissed her on the forehead, and told her that I would have loved her forever. Then I got out of the car and went to bed. That's it. Of course, I didn't sleep last night, and I doubt I'll sleep tonight. I don't know what to do now. Her opportunity to contest the divorce has already passed, so that's at least something. But I haven't talked to my lawyer yet. Once again, I'm crying, sinking into these waves of depression and anger. It was really hard to hear everything last night, and honestly, maybe it would have been better not to know. Sure, she could have lied and made it all up, who knows. But it fits perfectly with everything I pieced together over the past month. That's it for now, I guess. It feels endless. Sometimes I have good days when I start feeling stronger, and then something else happens. It seems like months have passed, but really it's only been days. I'll try to get some rest. Imagine that the love of your life, the only woman you've ever loved, the only one you've ever kissed, tells you she's been cheating on you for over 4 years just because she was bored. She didn't fall out of love, we didn't grow distant, we didn't have relationship problems or a lack of intimacy, nothing like that. She was just bored. I can't decide if that makes this better or worse. Update 7. I have to summon all my willpower just to get out of bed in the morning. The house is so quiet now, and the reality of these last months has finally sunk in. I feel like Andy Dufresne from The Shawshank Redemption, standing in the path of a hurricane, hoping the storm will die down someday. I know it's just a movie, but that's exactly how my life feels right now, no joy, no hope, just a giant crater where my heart used to be. I've tried so hard to wear this mask of unshakable stability for my daughters ever since I found out about the affair. Then there were those agonizing weeks of grief, of us living together, then the revelations, and now she's gone. And I've realized I can't pretend to be strong anymore. I can barely lift myself out of bed in the morning, but I know I have to go on for my daughter's sake, so I do. I keep replaying our last conversation in my head like a horrible movie, regretting every word, wishing I could go back and say something, anything, different. The last thing I told her was, "I love you and always will, but I never want to see you again." I was hurt, vulnerable, just trying to be honest. Tired of talking about the same thing over and over, about the despair and apologies. And now life, as if it were some twisted prank, granted my wish, except my daughters will have to grow up without a mother for the rest of their days. They seem okay, though. My eldest keeps looking after me, making sure I eat, watching movies with me on weekends. I'm really grateful for that. The younger two seem to be getting back to normal, school, sports, that kind of thing, and I'm glad for them. My mom and my brother have been a huge support, but every day is still impossibly hard. We're all going to therapy. The girls seem to like it. For me, it's not working yet, there's too much guilt and sadness, too many thoughts swirling around. I only go because my eldest daughter insists. I'm a Christian, and I've been reading the book of Job from the Old Testament, trying to keep my faith no matter what. But I have to admit, I'm not doing very well. I want to scream, "It's not fair," 1,000 times at the top of my lungs. I thought I was a good husband and father, thought I did right by people, thought I was a moral person. And now I'm facing this terrible fate, unable to climb out of the pit of despair. I feel tired, filled with self-pity and an awful emptiness. Life is unfair, life is hard, I understand that. I'm just not sure I have the strength to weather this storm. What do you do when you've hit rock bottom? Let's pause right now and answer that question in the comments. And what do you think of this whole story? It's so sad to realize you can do everything right, do everything by the book, and still end up in such a horrible situation. Yes, that's life. But even in the darkest times, it's worth remembering that every morning is a chance to start a new day, to take a step forward, even a tiny one. Thank you all for watching this video to the end. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.